الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending immense greetings and salutations upon the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Today's topic at hand or discussion is about the youth, or about the state of the youth or the future of the youth. And many young individuals, they think that they are the only ones who are going through a life of change, a life of facing desires, a life of facing temptations. There's possibly been not thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions, possibly billions have gone through those same changes. So what is different between the changes or the feelings that our youth have today to what the youth came across previously inside their lives? Obviously, the wider community does have a big impact. We cannot deny that. The society that we live in at times, it does increase one's desires, one's temptations, one's feelings to enter into what we find around us, the many muharramat, the many haram things around us which become normal, common practice. If we approach non-Muslims today, we say to them, drinking, smoking, whatever, womanizing, is it haram, is it a temptation? Most of them conclude that's their way of life. For us now, I don't know here, but in London you find now it's no longer Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. It is now Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Every single night is party night for these people, following their lust and their desires and what they want to do. So they're trying to paint the image that maybe we are abnormal. Maybe some young Muslims feel, hey, maybe we are abnormal. We're not doing what everybody around us is doing. So we could be something strange. So they're trying to paint the picture that this is a normal way of life. But rather, they are abnormal. We're trying to take the picture back that we are normal. The normal way of life of an individual is to preserve their chastity, their honor, their dignity, to stay away from haram things. Many of us, when we were growing up, if a Muslim was known to involve in anything haram, then that person was stigmatized in the whole society. So it's very, very abnormal for a Muslim to practice something in that manner, and especially in public. Today, 10, 15, 20 years later, we find it's turned around. A lot of young Muslims go through a bad path and then they come towards a good path. Whereas before, it was very, very rare. And that's, the Quran talks about this concept about people trying to seek purity and the wider community pushing them away or demonizing them. As the Quran mentions, أَخْرِجُوا آلَ لُوتِ مِنْ قَرْيَتِكُمْ إِنَّهُمْ أُنَاسٌ يَتَطَهَّرُونَ. Get rid of the people of Lut. Because why? They want to be a purified people. So this methodology existed thousands of years ago. That they said anybody who's calling towards purity, towards good conduct, towards good behavior, and if you go and read the main theme of the people of Lut alayhi salam, what were they practicing? They were practicing homosexuality. So that's they made the statement, get rid of these pure people who want to have a life of purity. Likewise, we find that the spreading of vice and sins and diseases, the Quran warns about Muslims getting involved in this, or any individual spreading fawahish, illicit behavior. As the Quran mentions, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُحِبُّونَ أَن تَشِيعَ الْفَاحِشَةُ فِي الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. Whoever loves to spread immorality amongst the believers will have an evil punishment in this world and inside the akhirah. What is fahisha? Fahisha, loosely translated in the English language, is sexual promiscuity, lewdness, wickedness, immorality. That's the general meaning of fahisha. And today we find that fawahish, there are many people enter into immoral practices and consider it as a part of their life. And remember, temptations is a test of life. Thus you find there's two meanings of the word fitna in the Arabic language, or many, many meanings there are. One meaning of fitna that we find is trials and tribulations, whereby you find many of the books of ahadith. If you go to the end chapters, you find what is known as Kitab al-Fitan, the book on the fitna that will come, the coming of the Antichrist, Ad-Dajjal, Ya'juj wal-Ma'juj, the final Malhamatul Kubra, the final war that will take place towards the end of time. This is known as Kitab al-Fitan, the book of trials and tribulations. That's one meaning of fitna. Difficulties that we all face. As the Quran mentions in Surah Al-Ankabut, the beginning, the 29th chapter of the Quran, Alif Lam Mim, أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون ولقد فتنا الذين من قبلهم فليعلمن الله الذين صدقوا وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. Beginning of Surah Al-Ankabut, the surah of the spider. Do people think they're going to say we believe and they'll be left alone? That's what some of us Muslims think. I just believe that's sufficient for me. وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. And they will never ever be tested. Indeed, Allah did test the people that came before us and will test us to find out who are the truthful individuals and who are the liars. So that's one meaning of fitna. The other meaning of fitna that we find is what? Is shahawat, is desires, is temptations. Everything around us, this world is a temptation. That's what ulama have concluded. There are two main diseases that hit this Muslim ummah. One is shubuhat, one is doubts in your aqa'id, in your belief. You don't know what to believe in. Superstitious beliefs, corrupt beliefs, beliefs which go against the belief that the Prophet Muhammad came with, against what the Quran tells us what we need to believe in. And as you find grave worship, saint worship, excessive worship of whatever it may be, is rampant in the Muslim ummah. Even today, when people say, why do you teach Tawheed? Why do you talk about Tawheed? No one commits shirk today. That's nonsense. Fasiru fil ard, go and travel through the Muslim lands. To this day, you still find people doing what? They worship graves. They ask the dead. They ask the salihin. They're dead individuals. They ask them, وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرٌ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. Most of them believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're what? Mushrikun. Their faith is tainted with shirk. And that's why we find that shirk is a dangerous element. If there's any major sin, or the most major sin that you find in Islam, is what? To associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Quran mentions, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah will forgive any sin that you commit. But if you die upon associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will never ever be forgiven. This is rampant, unfortunately, in the Muslims today. The Muslims don't understand what their belief is. Then you find those who've discovered their belief. What do you find? The second disease is ash-shahawat. Look at the other side of the Muslim globe. What do you find? They know what their faith is. Involved in what? Temptations, desires. Build a palace here, build a villa there, build this here, have the Formula 1 racings in Muslim countries, have this, have that, now have the Football World Cup. What do you want the Football World Cup for in our countries? To do what? And they're doing what? You know what they're going to do? Legalize alcohol. We're going to have, amakin khasa, a special place for these people to come and get drunk. This is our mentality. This is supposed to be the wider world. We're integrating with people. Who's forcing you to serve alcohol to these people? Shurbul khamr that we know, according to Sharia, is haram. Drinking alcohol is haram. Serving it, sitting on the table, crushing the grapes, transporting it, taking the money, all haram in the hadith of Sahih Muslim. So now all of a sudden now, it becomes Islamically allowed. Because we're holding the World Cup in 2022. It becomes halal now, all of a sudden, doesn't it? Where are the people to speak out against these munkarat? Clear munkarat that we find. Travel through many of our lands. You find nightclubs there. You find all types of prostitution. You find drugs. Everything taking place where? In blessed lands. And everyone is what? Summun, bukmun, umyun, fahum la ya'qilun. Deaf, dumb and blind as if they don't know. La yarji'un, they never return. Talk about these things, well, you may be some type of radical preacher. That's what you must be. This is reality. Because why? Love of shahawat. Love of desires. Don't talk about these things. Just like many of us have been grown up, just make sure you pray, you come back home and that's it. So likewise, the wider Muslim world as well. Just pray and just stay quiet. Don't talk about what goes around. But these are diseases. And we find shubuhat, doubts in our aqidah, and shahawat, which are destroying us wherever we go. And likewise today, the Muslim youth. Most of the Muslim youth, they don't know that yesterday was 10 years on from what? The invasion of Afghanistan. Most of our Muslim youth, they don't care. They don't know what happened in Iraq, what happened in Afghanistan, in Kashmir, in Shishan, in Somalia. The list is endless. We don't have a clue. Because most of us are worried about what? Enjoying our life. That's all that we're worried about. If it doesn't come on my doorstep, it doesn't concern me, well, it's not my business. And that's a mass portion of our Muslim youth. For every one young individual who may be praying, fasting, or as we say, fixing their life, there's possibly what? Not 99, 999 who can't care less. That's the reality of our Muslim youth. So one may be a good individual, alhamdulillah, that's good. But the rest can't care less what's beginning to take place. Life is a struggle. If a person thinks that I'm just a Muslim and I'll just stroll into paradise, My father was the imam, my mother went for hajj, my sister wears hijab, my brother memorizing the Quran, my small brother listens to Alif Baba on the computer, and that's it, that's enough, I'm going to go to paradise. That's what some of us we think, don't we? That someone's doing something and I'm going to go to paradise. Anything in this world, you have to struggle for it. You have to struggle in your life to gain what you want. And likewise for paradise, وَأَلَّيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى. Man will only have that which he strives for. So if you strive for the akhirah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the tawfiq to that individual. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Whoever strives in our paths, we will open up the many paths of goodness for that person to come closer and closer towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in the hadith inside Sahih Muslim that we find, the book talking about paradise and the creation of paradise, that's where we're all trying to head towards that direction. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created paradise, and Jibreel alayhi salam went and saw paradise, and said that whoever sees paradise, the beauty, the embezzlement, the glamour, the glitter, the gold, will just want to do what? Dive straight into paradise. And when he saw Jahannam, and said whoever sees Jahannam, the blazing fire, the rage, the anguish, the punishment, the torture, we want to stay away from it. So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Go and cover حُفَّتِ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِحِ وَحُفَّتِ النَّارُ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ. Cover up paradise with obstacles. Cover up paradise with obstacles. So you have to go overcome the hurdles or obstacles to get into paradise. And cover up Jahannam, the hellfire, with what? With shahawat. Every single path of shahwa, of desire, leads you closer to what? Towards Jahannam. Simple. And every path of paradise is an obstacle. Imam Nawawi, who explains this hadith in his 18 or 19 magnanimous volumes that you find written, explaining Sahih Muslim, centuries ago, he highlights there's 4 obstacles you need to overcome to get into paradise. The first obstacle he mentions is al-ijtihad fil ibadat, is striving in your regular rituals that you have to perform. For example, the 5 daily prayers. The Quran tells us, حَافِظُوا عَلَى الصَّلَوَاتِ وَالصَّلَاةِ الْوُسْطَى وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. Guard your prayers, and especially the middle prayer, and stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, observe it. How many of us Muslims culturally, well, do we really have to pray? That's what many cultures, I know, most of the friends around me that grew up with me, it's a cultural practice. When you get to the age of 40, 50, or when the grandfathers pray, or when you get time, you pray. If I'm at college, if I'm at university, or if I'm surrounded by non-Muslims, should I really pray? These are all cultural practices. Because Islam says that wherever you happen to be, you have to stop and do what? Offer your prayers. Inna salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta. Prayers have been prescribed for believers at set times. Set times. Not that I'm working in the West, I'm surrounded by non-Muslims. Wherever you happen to be, these are the fundamentals. And I believe deeply and personally that any Muslim living inside this country becomes punctual about the 5 daily prayers, stays away from the haram, sticks to the halal, will inshallah be a successful individual. But sometimes we want too much from our youth as well, that every single one of them becomes Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah or Salahuddin or a revival, whatever it may be. Be realistic. Be realistic. If every single young Muslim becomes observant of the 5 daily prayers, and you can see yourself, how many young individuals come for Salatul Fajr? Not many, is it? But they're outside talking about all the political problems and this, that, and the other takes place. But Salatul Fajr, hardly anybody there. The day of the believer begins when? At that time. That's the beginning. That's the real struggle. So a lot of us have been talking about a lot of these things. And that's when a Jewish man was speaking to a Muslim one day, and the Muslim in his rage and said to him, why don't you fear us anymore? He said, why should we fear you? How many people come for Jum'ah? How many people came yesterday? Masjid is full. There's no space. How many people come Salatul Fajr? Not many, a handful. He goes, the day the masjid is full as Yawmul Jum'ah, that's the day we'll be scared of you once again. Until that day, it's a long distance, brothers. It's a long distance to get to that we think that why are they no longer scared of us anymore? Why don't we have our lands? Hate to sound so harsh, but even go to the blessed land of Philistine, you find the majority of people don't pray. Go there and see with your own eyes. When people say, yes, we got problems, why? Because of the sins of our own hands. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places these difficulties to begin to sift out that a lot of the problems we face in our life, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعد الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. Corruption appears upon the land and the ocean because what man sends forth with his own hands. You may taste the fruits of your own handiwork. Yes, we have other enemies, American, wal Yahud, kada wa kada. We have those enemies, yeah. They're enemies, but the real enemy is our own selves. Our real enemy is our own selves. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Don't become like those individuals that you forget Allah and Allah forgets you. That's the reality. That many of us forget Allah's subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we want to pass the problems to somebody else. Yes, those are problems. We're not denying them. But they're not the real problem. The real problem is within ourselves. We need to begin to understand, as the Quran mentions, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will never change a condition for people until they don't change their own condition. So we as people need to begin to work and change our condition. That begins by what? Al-ibadat. The 5 daily prayers that we find. Fasting in the month of Ramadan, the long days, the performance of Hajj. These are obligatory actions that every single Muslim should be striving their best and reminding the people to do this inside their life. The second obstacle the person needs to overcome, that Imam Nawawi mentions, is kadhmul ghayth, is to be able to swallow one's anger. So some of us could dress like Muslims, come mashallah to the prayer, but then when we have a debate or talk with someone, we get frustrated, we get all angry. You know, that's the same brother, nice, humble, mashallah, inside salah, shouting like a astaghfirullah, like a dog, or like an animal like me. Over what? Over what? Sifatul mu'mineen, kadhmul ghayth. A believer is the one who swallows their anger, even if they happen to be right. A person who knows that they're right and somebody's disputing with you, I guarantee for that person, the hadith person, a house in paradise. You know you're right. Why carry on arguing for? But just for the sake of arguing. So this is another obstacle, because sometimes the ego gets in the way. And the ego is another dangerous element upon the human soul as well. The third obstacle is what? Is al-afu, to be able to forgive another person. Sometimes we find some of us is difficult. Some of us fall into the Jewish proverb, we never forgive and we never forget. That's what some of us Muslims are. We don't want to forgive, we don't want to forget another problem, or another abuse another Muslim may have given. But the real Muslim is what? Is one who forgives and forgets. Why? Because it's an obstacle to retune the inner soul of the individual. You forgive and you forget. And the fourth thing that concerns us today, that Imam Nawawi mentioned centuries ago, is as-sabr and shahawat, is to have patience to stay away from desires. Remember, this is written centuries ago. It's exactly like today. So he's written it centuries ago. If you want to overcome that hurdle, that obstacle, and you want to be able to come towards paradise, is you need to have patience in staying away from the shahawat, the desires and the temptations that all of us are surrounded or covered by. So obviously, the environment is difficult at times. There's no doubt. We're not going to deny that fact. That ghariza, al-nafsiyya, or the ghariza shahwiyya that every single human being has within them. Even as you find in the world of medics, that men have a higher level of testosterone than women, of desires. So what do you find in prophetic traditions? Centuries ago, what did the Prophet advise? Swimming, archery, throwing of an arrow, sword fighting. Today, building bombs. But you see, horse riding. All these sports, if you go and look at them in great detail, what do you find about them? They're exerting your efforts. They're drowning your system. How many young Muslims are involved in some form of physical combat at the moment? Or trained and able to do something? We can't even run to the end of the block and come back without running out of breath, isn't it? That's our state. Islam isn't just about the soul. In the hadith of Bukhari, minor signs of the Day of Judgment is obesity will appear in the Muslim Ummah. Obesity. That's why some of the sheikhs are fat, aren't they? Eh? But it will appear in this Muslim Ummah. So you have to be fit. Not just your soul, not just your mind. Because some of us just go into academics, your body as well. Everything for a Muslim needs to be in pristine shape. Everything needs to be kept appropriately. And likewise, many of the youth as well. That if they want to control their desires, bring their desires down, hard labor, hard work, that you find, it takes away the temptations, it takes away the desires, it lessens it, it weakens it within the individual. And as I said, that the soul has that yearning. We cannot deny that fact. As the Quran mentions, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. Those things which are loved to men are women, are gold, silver, children, etc. Likewise, the opportunities given, the Quran mentions in Surah Yusuf, إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي. Indeed, the nafs, it has a desire for for evil. If it's placed in that right environment, we're not angels or in an angelic form, we're human beings. If all of us, any one of us is placed inside a tempestuous environment, we'll all fall into it. Because that's what the Quran mentions. And this surah is mentioned where this ayah inside Surah Yusuf. The surrounding is talking about who? Yusuf alayhi salam, who'd been given shatrul jamal, who'd been given half of beauty. When he was placed inside that environment with that young woman, or the wife of the Aziz, and there was no one there. But obviously he had what? He had that fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّهُ مَنْ يَتَّقِي وَيَصْبِرْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Whoever fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has patience, Allah will never let the reward of the doers of good go by. So he had that fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, took him out of that situation. So that's what we need to understand, that the soul, sometimes people say, why do you preach about not looking at strange women or lowering our gaze, whatever it may be? I feel no desire inside my heart. Well, either there must be something wrong with you. Bluntly, isn't it? Because the Quran is saying, that the Quran says, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقْ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. Doesn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala know what He has created, the most subtle, the most aware? The Quran is telling us this. The Quran says, وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُم. Quran says, say to the believers to lower their gaze and look at strange women and to guard their private parts. Oh, but Sheikh, today's 3D, it's plasma, it's this, it's not really HD, digital, it's not really a woman in front of you. Well, what is it then? What is it that in front of you you're visualizing? All of this, that Muslims begin to make a mockery about their Islam, or about their understanding of Islam. We're simple Muslims. وَقَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We hear and we obey. We read simple things from the Quran, and the simplicity is what will make a person successful. Also trying to dissect things and try to hair split things to try to come out with some new ruling or some new understanding. This is dangerous. Look how simple some of the companions were. In the month of Ramadan, they took a white thread and a black thread and stuffed it underneath their pillow. Because the Quran mentioned, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ. Carry on eating and drinking until you can make a distinction between a white thread and a black thread. So one of the companions, not mistaken, Adi bin Hatim, he took a white thread, a black thread, stuffed it underneath his pillow. Every so often at night, he started looking at it. When he could make a distinction between a white thread and black thread, he knew it was the time to begin my fast. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down min al-fajr. The white thread and the black thread, we're talking about the white thread, we're in the skies and the horizons. Because khayt literally means thread. But look how simple the companions were. They thought it means that take the white thread, black thread. They didn't have electricity. So in the realms of darkness, when you can make a distinction between the two types of thread, then you can begin your fast. You stop eating, you begin your fast. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down min al-fajr. What we're talking about is the horizons. That's how the companions were. But as a side point, the companions, what did they do? They ruled and they governed for many centuries. Because why? Of their simplicity. Not because of the technical things that we have today, that Muslims are very technically organized in what they want to do. Simplicity is what, once again, will give the Muslims that same success that existed before. فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. If you believe as they believed, you will become rightly guided. Returning back to Surah Yusuf, because Surah Yusuf is a very important surah for many of us young individuals. We want to read a whole story of the Quran from the beginning to the end, with no pauses, no interruptions, without talking about another topic. Read Surah Yusuf, 12th chapter of the Quran. In that you find also in the beginning, the way of the brethren of Yusuf, where they decided to let us kill him, and one said, no, let us throw him into the well. And what did they say after that? They said, وَتَكُونُ مِن بَعْدِهِ قَوْمًا صَالِحِينَ. Then afterwards, we're going to become righteous individuals. This methodology concerns us today. How many young Muslims think the same thing? When I get to your age of 40, or when I get married and I have children, when I performed Hajj, I've done whatever I want to do, then you know what? I'll become a good Muslim. That's what many young Muslims, you speak to Arab Muslims, say, yeah, Sheikh, leave me alone, let me enjoy life, live life to the fullest, let me do whatever I want to do in my life, and then I'll come back. The Quran is talking about this methodology. وَتَكُونُ مِن بَعْدِهِ قَوْمٌ صَالِحِينَ. Do my haram, and then I'll come back and be a righteous individual. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see ibadah where? When a person is young. When a person gets old, a person at the age of 50, 60, 70, that is a sign of maturity. Because why? You have one foot in the grave anyway. Excuse the expression, not to disrespect the mashayikh. You're one foot in the grave. So a sensible individual is going to automatically come to the masjid. Unless they're senile, they're going to stay away from the masjid. But you note that very, very carefully. Anybody comes to the age of 50, 60, 70, whatever done in their life, eventually their back begins to bend and they begin to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is excellent. Because that's good signs. Because they haven't passed away and they haven't left this dunya. So it's good that they're submitting. But what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really want? Do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants those individuals to submit? Or does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want the people at the prime of their life? That's the key element. Yes, the task is hard. The task is difficult. But thus the reward is what? Immense. سَبْعَةٌ يُذِلُّهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي ظِلِّهِ يَوْمَ لَا ظِلَّ إِلَّا ظِلُّهُ. 7 types of people will be under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereby there will be no shade. Amongst that, those 7 categories, you find Imamun Adil, a just Imam, a just leader. You find secondly, straight after that, Shabun Nasha'a fi ibadatillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, a young man or a young woman who spent their life doing what? Worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That person would be where? Under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't talk about an old sheikh or an elderly man. It says a young person who spent the prime of their life worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, that means the opposite, young sister as well. Every time we mention men, it means women as well. No one should think that we're focusing on men. It refers to both individuals. But because a hadith used the male gender, it automatically carries the opposite as well. Then the hadith continues. In category 4 or 5, it mentions about a young man who's tempted by a beautiful woman. And he says, what? Inni akhafullah. I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That person will be where? Under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, a woman could be tempted as well. And she says, I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, walks away from that. So that's the immense reward that will be given to that individual. Likewise, in a hadith that we find, hadith marfu'u, Inna Allah la ya'jabu min shabin la sabwatan lahu. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala marvels, praises a young person who has no sabwa. Sabwatan bi ma'na la yamilu ila al-hawa. Doesn't go towards desires or temptations. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises this young individual, which is, as Imam al-Nawawi, Sahibu Fayd al-Qadir mentions, فَهَذَا nadir. This is very, very rare. Because most young people are worried about what? Enjoying themselves, doing something which is incorrect. So this individual who stays away from it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises that individual. That's the type of individual we want to be, as we began with. We want to be that normal individual, staying away from these abnormal practices that we find that most people have fallen into. And then the hadith, it continues about the other types of individuals giving sadaqah with their right hand, the left hand doesn't know what they spent, etc. The ulama highlight this is the best hadith of fada'il. The best hadith of virtues is this hadith which contains these 7 categories. That's why the shaykh, he wrote 2 volumes, about 300 to 400 pages each volume, explaining this one hadith about these 7 categories. Ibn Abdul Barr, he mentions, an Andalusian Spanish scholar, he mentions this is the best hadith about virtues, about good character and good behavior. All these 7 individuals, if you study them in great detail, or these 7 categories, ulama mention what makes them come together. The just imam, the young individual, the person spending their wealth, the person worried about other individuals. Ishtirakuhum, all of them got together because they broke their desires. Because the imam adil, the leader, who's a leader, can anyone stop him? Is there anyone who can say, you can't do this, you can't do that? And we know that even the naked person in the king's land is dressed, isn't it? Because whatever the king says goes, isn't it? As we find the emperor came out naked, he said, am I dressed? If you say he's dressed, you're lying, so you get executed. If you say you're not dressed, you're defaming, you still get executed. So either way, there's nothing to do. So the imam who's just, meaning he breaks his desires, that people are correct him, saying this is wrong, this is right, do this, do that. He's a position and he listens. So he breaks his desires. Likewise, a young individual is breaking their desires. The person spending their wealth. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. None of you truly attain piety until you don't spend on the things that you love. This is the key element that makes these 7 categories come together. All of them break their desires to go to that higher level. And that is exactly what we need to do. All of us is break our desires to come to a higher spiritual level, to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, we find that on the day of judgment, all of us will stand there. And our feet will not move until we're asked about 4 or about 5 things. Amongst them, عَنْ شَبَابِهِ فِيمَا أَفْنَى. When we were young, what did we do? What do we do? How do we spoil or waste our time whilst we were young individuals? We'll be asked in the day of judgment. In the hadith, in Sunan Imam Tirmidhi, if I'm not mistaken, we'll all be asked about that question. About our wealth, how do we gain our wealth? Where do we spend our wealth? Our knowledge, how do we gain it? What do we do with the knowledge that we gain? Today many young Muslims, they know all the hadith that we're quoting, all the Quran, they know it. But why are they not implementing it? They know, most people, they know this is haram. Why are they not implementing it? Why? Because they're following their desires. They're playing upon their desires and not going back to take the fruits of their knowledge, take the fruits of the Quran, take the benefits of the Quran to help them to become, inshallah, better, individual. Likewise, you find many ulama that mention, young individuals, go and strive and do actions. Because indeed, the sun that we find when it begins to move from the meridian, from the time of Dhuhr and begins to descend, time of Asr, is still the sun. But the power and the rays of the sun are different. From the early morning to coming at the peak time and when it begins to descend. You still call it the sun. So likewise, you're still the human being. But the most powerful time of the human being is when? Is the young days. That's the prime time of the life of the individual. That's the time that we should be striving when the sun is at its peak. Likewise, you find a tree. And trees very rarely give fruits towards the end of their life. There are some trees, but the normal sunnah of a tree is to give fruits, benefit at a certain age. After that, it becomes what? Khashab. It just becomes a bark. It becomes an empty tree. So we want to give the fruits when? The best time of our life is when that person is serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whilst they're a young individual. And the fruits of them are many. Ihfadillah yahfadhka. Preserve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah will preserve you. Some of the ulama of hadith have mentioned, obviously clear meaning is there about preserving halal and haram, etc. But the other deeper meaning, some of them mentioned, that whilst we were young, some of us, we stuck to that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to do. And that's when coming to the age of 80, 90, 100, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did what? Preserved our faculties. We're still able to see, able to go to the toilet on our own, able to eat, drink, do everything as a normal individual. Because why? Possibly, when we were young individuals, we preserved the rules and regulations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us. Because some of the people at the moment, age of 60, 70, barely can walk, any problems, pains, arthritis, this, that, and the other. Why? Possibly, wallah, I'm not saying this, everybody, but it may be a general rule. Most of these people spend a life of what? Disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Most of the people inside our community, what do you see about them? Their children have left them. Talking here about non-Muslims. They're living on their own. They have a wretched life in general. They have a wretched life. You know, the big business in this country at the moment, you're going to do a business, is building old age pensioners' home. You'll earn big money. You'll earn millions. On my road that I live on, there's 3. People are paying literally thousands to keep their parents, to stuff their parents in these places so they can just stay away from them. And what goes around, comes around. And we as Muslims shouldn't fall into that trap. That just want to leave everything, leave our parents, leave our life, and just enjoy our life. Because believe me that one day it will come back to you. Today when I see my kids saying something to me and I start laughing, my family says, why are you laughing? I think, you know what, 25, 30 years ago, I said the same things to my father. I said exactly the same things. I've done exactly the same thing to my father, and now today I'm facing it in my life. So when my father used to say to me, what son, when you grow up, you'll face exactly the same thing. And it's true. It's a reality. What goes around, what goes around comes back around. That's why even the Quran, it mentions that methodology. When Ibrahim a.s. spoke to Azar, remember Azar, his father, was a kafir, was a disbeliever. What did he say to him? He said, Ya abati, lima ta'budu shaitan. Meaning abati, it doesn't mean, oh, you filthy kafir, you fajr, you this, that, and the other. You're making idols. He said to him, oh, my beloved father, my respectable father, why are you worshipping these idols? Why are you worshipping the devil? Spoke to him what with good words. Today we find that some of our Muslims who learn what Islam is, speak to their parents in what? In a rude manner. Abuse them. Even your parents are kuffar, are disbelievers. There's still hukuk, there's rights, there's regulations, how you conduct yourself towards them. The only time you don't obey them is if they call you towards shirk. Other than that, they tell you, look, come and clean the garden. Come and clean the garden. That's not haram. Tell you to paint the room, paint the room. That's it. They tell you to go and buy pork, then say, I'm not going to do that. That's it. That's where you stop there. But other than that, you obey your parents. وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. Follow, behave them, obey them in those things which are good the person needs to do. So Ibrahim a.s., when he had his son Ismail, many years later, what happens when Ismail saw the dream, or Ibrahim a.s. saw the dream, that I have to sacrifice my son Ismail? What happened when he came to his father? When his father said to him, Ya Ismail, I've seen in a dream, Inni azbahuka. I've seen in a dream, I have to sacrifice you. What does Ismail say? He said, Ya abati. He said, oh my beloved father, if'al ma tu'mar. Satajiduni insha'Allahu min as-sabirin. He said, oh my beloved, respected father, do whatever you have to do. Those are the same words. Ya abati is what? Ibrahim said who? To his kafir father. And today, his believing son turns around and says it to who? To a believing father. So what goes around, comes around, simple in life. So we begin to follow the etiquettes around us. As many of the non-Muslims, unfortunately, they suffer. Their children can't be bothered to see them. Maybe it becomes once in a month, once in 6 months, once in a year, once sending a Christmas card, and after that, that's it, forget about them totally. Maybe just attend their funeral. That's not the way Muslims should be. Our society is based upon morality. It's based upon goodness towards the people around us. Any student of the Quran knows, straight after worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and show goodness to your parents. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Your Lord has decreed that you worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and show goodness to your parents. وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. Don't even say uff to your parents. We don't even say uff. We know many of us, we say to our parents, don't we? Far worse, the Quran says, don't even say uff. Uff doesn't even mean anything. But that is min al-kaba'ir. From amongst the major action, or major words for a person to say that to their parents. Why? Because the society here is rubbing off. It's not cool to be good to your parents. It's not cool to carry your parents shopping, or to wash your dad's car, or to walk with your mother, or to go shopping with them, or to look after them. It's not cool. That's what the society teaches us. And that begins to rub off on many of the Muslim youth. When I was growing up, I was holding my mum shopping, and all the non-Muslim boys used to see me, look at you carrying your mum shopping. I said, listen, I carry it all day long. I carry it all day long. If you don't want to carry it, that's up to you. You don't teach me how I behave towards my parents. There's nothing you can teach me how I can behave towards my parents. You don't want to give them any respect, that's your prerogative. That's your way of life. But the sad thing is that many of us will begin to imitate. And thus we find that man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum. Whoever begins to imitate the people becomes like them. So young Muslims that you find, they begin to imitate the people around them, the non-Muslims around them. Why the Muslim world, the non-Muslim world around them? You find, look, young Muslim boys trying to pretend that they're rap stars. Now you find tattooing their bodies. Before, people used to tattoo themselves secretly, keep them covered up. You can't see my tattoos now. But now people you find, alhamdulillah, I don't have any tattoos there. You find people playing tattoos where? On their neck, on their faces, all over their bodies, etc. Muslims doing this. Muslims getting their teeth knocked out, placing diamond teeth, gold teeth. For what purpose? What type of behavior is this? Then you find Muslims, and some of the Muslims, they think that they're black. It's not their culture, it's not their language, isn't it? You're born up as a Muslim, isn't it? That you find, unfortunately, that's the reality. That's the culture that many of our Muslims are going into that pattern. You are trying to pretend something who you're not. For somebody who's living in Jamaica, that's their life, wearing a string vest, walking around, strutting around, enjoying their life. That's their culture. If you mix with them, that's their life. That's the way they conduct themselves. That's the way that they speak. That's why even the studies were done that when some of the people, they tap their teeth. Why do they do that? They said that's part of their language, that's part of their culture. But how is that my culture? How is that my faith? How is that my way of life? That some of us are beginning to assimilate ourselves and begin to imitate these individuals. And likewise, this music culture of music, a lot of gangster rap that young Muslims are listening to. No wonder we've got a hell of a lot of problems. In our research, alhamdulillah, we never listen to a full track of any of these rap stars, but in our research and looking at certain elements, if this is what the Muslim youth are watching, then this is pure pornography. If these are the videos that go with those songs, and that's what most of the Muslim youth are watching and listening to these rap songs and watching these videos, that is pure pornography. No wonder we've got a big problem in our society. That some of us, we don't know. Some Muslims don't know. They can't believe that Muslims are doing these things. Some Muslims can't even believe, and if you went into the masjid and start talking about drugs, they say to you, oh, you know what, don't talk about drugs. We don't have that problem. Damn hell, we don't have that problem. £40 million heroin connection, where? Between Muslims in Bradford. £40 million trafficking of heroin. Some of the biggest drug players at the moment in Alam Rock, which is controlled by the Johnson crew and the Burger Boy boys from 20 years ago. At the moment, some of the biggest drug pushers in that area in Alam Rock in Birmingham has become the Muslims. That's a reality. But some of us, we don't want to go into this. As long as we just pray, we lock the masjid, we go home. That's the reality. You find Muslims, you find involved in what? Racketeering of prostitution, gang violence, trafficking of weapons, of fraud, passports, vehicles, cars, whatever it may be. Give me half an hour, and I'll tell you what's happening inside this area. It won't take me too long, isn't it? I'm not one of those imams who doesn't have a clue what's going on and thinking that everybody is a good Muslim. You understand? It won't take too long to discover, because why? Some of us are not in tune. Even the young Muslim concluded 30%, of the young Muslims concluded that most of the imams, they don't have a clue. Don't have a clue what's going on. Some of the imams, with all respect, them can't even speak English properly. So obviously they can't speak the language to the people, can they? They can't relate to the people. And what does the Quran tell us? It tells us, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا بِالرَّسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ. We don't send any messenger except for to speak what? The language of his people. Speak the language of the people, you can interact with the people. We're not disrespecting the imams, they're on a great task. We're a product of those imams, they're our teachers, they're our sheikhs. We're not trying to disrespect them. We're trying to say that, let's move along to begin to understand what are our problems and how can we solve our problems. How can we take our youth away from the problems that they're facing and make them come back towards closer to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Likewise, we find the role of the youth previously. الَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. Who are those individuals who responded to Allah and His Messenger? Because some of us, we may think that the companions, they were elderly individuals, they were the age of 40, 50. Most of the companions were what? They were young men, young women. They were young in age. Look at the age of Abdullah bin Abbas, Mu'adh bin Jabal, they find Abdullah bin Umar. Go and read their lives. They were young individuals, young boys who were around the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise in the Quran, it talks inside Surah Al-Kahf, the 18th chapter of the Quran, إِنَّهُمْ فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ وَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى. They were young boys who believed in Allah, and we increased them in what? In guidance. So we need the zeal, the passion of young individuals. We need the wisdom of the elderly individuals, and we need to put that together. Likewise, Surah Al-Buruj, if you read the tafsir of this surah, tafsir Ibn Kathir, the story of the boy and the king. One boy stopped the whole nation, stopped the king, changed the whole people around them. And that's what we need to begin to understand. Sometimes, yes, one person can change society. If you have that feeling, if you work together, you become a network. You work together, you become an ummah in helping to make that wider change around us. And that's, as I mentioned, go and look at the life of many of the companions, young individuals. Mu'adh bin Jabal, أعلم هذه الأمة يعني بالحلال والحرام. Mu'adh bin Jabal was the most knowledgeable individual regarding halal and haram. He was a young boy. Abdullah bin Abbas, known as Turjuman al-Quran, the one who's translating the Quran, because the Prophet prayed for him, Allahumma faqihhu fi din wa alimhu ta'wil. Teach him ta'wil bima'na tafsir, and give him the understanding of the deen. That's why he's praiseworthy. How many of our young individuals today want to be ulama? How many want to be imams? You don't find that in credentials. Everyone wants to be a Wayne Rooney or play for Man U. I don't know, because Liverpool is not doing too well at the moment, is it? Dalglish is a good player when I was growing up. I don't think he's a good manager though, is he? Sorry?
Someone's calling us Man U.
So how many people, I'm not saying it's haram, you need to do that, but what's their aspirations? Where do you find a young individual saying, I want to be an imam. I want to do this inside my life. So we need to inspire them that these are the things that we should really be pitching towards our people inside our society. Likewise, you find that many of the young companions, that we may feel that they never had desires, they never had temptations. Read some of the ahadith. Young companion, his eyes fall upon a young woman. The Prophet pushes his face away. He looks again, the Prophet pushes his face away again. So they had desires, they had temptations. They fell into problems at time inside their life. So as we mentioned, they were not angels in that form, but the Prophet taught them. He nurtured them. He gave them those tools and ability that wherever they went, that they're able to observe the belief towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and preserve their faith and become good individuals. Likewise, if we look at those individuals who may think that the role of the companions, Osama bin Zayd at the age of 20 is placed as the leader of the final expedition, but the Prophet Muhammad passed away. So some of the companions said, look, Osama bin Zayd, he shouldn't be the leader. He's inexperienced, he's young, he doesn't have maturity. So what did Abu Bakr say? Abu Bakr said, if the Prophet selected him, and now that he's passed away, Osama bin Zayd would lead the army. At the age of what? Of 20. Going out and leading the final expedition of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Young companions, some of us we may think, what do they know about clothing, about Moschino and Dolce & Gabbana and Calvin Klein and this, that and the other? What do they know? Read the life of Musab ibn Umair. Musab ibn Umair was an individual who walked down Mecca. In the streets of Mecca, everybody could smell that. You know what? Musab ibn Umair had just gone past. Not your polo and your fragrances that you find at the moment. His clothing was the best clothing, the best silk that would come from Yemen. He would wear it. So everybody knew he was born up in riches. A luxurious individual. Everybody knew Musab ibn Umair. But what happened when he became a Muslim? Where did all those riches, all that life, that lavish lifestyle, where did it go? Read what happened in Battle of Uhud, whereby you find that his right hand is cut off, his left hand is cut off, and he holds the flag with the stumps of his arms, and still he's slain and he falls shaheed. And then when you find that when they go to bury him, they cover his head, his feet show. They go cover his feet, his head shows. The companion said this is the same individual who would wear the best clothing. Today, we can't even shroud his body. What should we do? So the Prophet Muhammad said, cover his head and take the green grass of idkhir, place that upon his feet and bury him. Many of the companions, they wept because they've seen the luxurious lifestyles the individual had, and today is not enough garments to cover him. So when we think that we're the only ones who know about the lifestyle around us or the temptations around us, it's difficult for us to overcome them. No. The man, the real individual is not the one with the clothing. The real individual, you are a man with the soul within yourself. You conquer that soul, you become a real man. That's the real meaning of ar-rujula. That's the real meaning of man. Don't people think it's physical biceps and triceps? Ar-rijalu qawwamuna ala nisa. Men are stronger than women. That's not the real meaning. It's the use of the mind. The man has the ability to not go on a rationalistic understanding, but sit down and to assess everything and to do everything in the right manner. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises the men of the community. Ar-rijalu qawwamuna ala nisa. If they have that inside their life. Likewise, if you go and study Zayd ibn Thabit, who's known as Jami al-Quran, the one who collected the Quran, who used to write the Quran for the Prophet Muhammad. That's why afterwards, Abu Bakr came to him and said to him, write the Quran, and he once again put it together for us. What did he say to him? He said, Innaka shabun. You're a young boy and there's no blame upon you. And you're an intelligent individual. That is why Abu Bakr selected him. What's the IQ level of most of our young individuals? Not very much, is it? In terms of education, so it sounds so sarcastic. If you go and look at statistics, the most illiterate individuals inside the society at the moment, is whom? It's the Muslims. That's a reality. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a reality inside this country. The most illiterate individuals inside the society are who? Are the Muslims. And we're supposed to be, we're intelligent, we got deen, we got this, we got that. But most of it we can't care less. Education isn't haram. Let's get that clear. It's what goes around could be haram. But to fix up your life and get education, most people say, that's a long thing, isn't it, education? Forget that. Isn't it? Forget that. Being a geek, reading books and this, that and the other. If you want to improve your society, you want to improve your parents, you want to improve the people around you, every Jummah, what do you have to, I don't know about your masjid here, but in our masjid, all the masjid, you have to get the bucket and do what? Money, please, chanda, isn't it? Collect it. We've been doing it for the last 25, 30 years, still got debt after debt. If we had just 5 individuals inside the masjid who became doctors by profession, who earn at least £100,000 a year, they just throw 10 grand each and finish the masjid bill. End of story. Isn't it? But we think small, so obviously you just stay small. You think big, then obviously inshallah you become big. You have to have lofty aspirations. Don't just think of us being a small, average individual. Think about creating inside society those who can go further, who come back and help the society, nurture the society, and we come out of the situation that we're in at the moment. Likewise, if I look at many of the ulama, read through their lives, Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad, guess how old they were? 9, 10, 11 years old. Their mother brought them, sit with the Sheikh and learn. Sit with the Sheikh and learn. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Sufyan ibn Thawri, young individuals they were. And Imam Nawawi, if you read in his biography, if you get at least Riyadh al-Salihin in 2 volumes, every masjid normally has that book, and everybody should keep that inside their home. Because the best book on Fada'il, the best book on virtues is Riyadh al-Salihin. At least 90% of the ahadith inside there are inshallah authentic and checked by many ulama of hadith. It talks about all different chapters and topics that would benefit every single Muslim. So all of us should go back and get a copy of Riyadh al-Salihin, keep it inside our home. If you read the biography about Imam Nawawi, at the age of 10, kids were saying to him, come, let us go and play outside with the stones or whatever it may be. Imam Nawawi used to cry. I'm not saying that we should give up playing football and whatever it may be. I'm just trying to highlight it must be some of us individuals. Imam Nawawi said that he used to cry and say, leave me alone, I'm going back to my studies. That's why he only died at the age of about approximately 44 or so. But in those 30 odd years, he left behind heritage that one cannot even imagine. He left behind heritage one cannot even imagine that today, for us to read it, would take all of our life. And our life would probably run out. But what was so special about them? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed barakah inside their life, in their time, and what they wanted to do. Likewise, if it's not knowledge, then look at conquering as well. If you read the life of Muhammad, you find Muhammad Qasim, Fatih al-Hind was Sindh, who conquered the current day, India, Pakistan, etc., who came. You know how old he was? 17. What are our 17-year-old boys doing? Can't even get themselves out of bed, can they, until 2, 3 o'clock in the day, isn't it? Conquered what? A whole nation. Muhammad al-Fatih, of Sultan of Constantinople that we find in Istanbul today, his father made him a leader at the age of 10. And he began to govern at the age of 14. So in one of the battles, he said to his father, look, come and join the battle. His father said, listen, you know I've gone into seclusion, retirement, and I'm not going to come out and take this expedition out and to lead it in warfare. So look what his son said. He said, oh my father, if you've made me the sultan, and not as a son, before I request you as a son, I'm commanding you as a sultan to come out and lead the battle in warfare. At the age of 14. Commanding his son, come out, let's go. What are our 14-year-olds doing? Is it Black Ops at the moment? Anybody managed to get to the final stages at the moment? It's a good game though, isn't it? I think a new version coming out, isn't it? So that was the past. What is our future? That's the future that you find that many ulama have written. The future is based upon the youth. If the youth are guided, then the future will be bright. And likewise, my respected sisters as well, the German Orientalist, he said it would be a great help if we can push the Quran inside and push the women outside. That's what they want. Women should be coming out, should be doing this, doing that, etc. No. The Quran says, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. Stay inside your homes. Learn the Quran, learn Sunnah. Because the first teacher behind any good man is what? Is a good mother. Is a good sister. Is a good daughter. Is a good wife. Read the life of all the Anbiya. Behind Isa was who? Maryam alayhi salam. Behind Musa, his mother, his sister. Behind the Prophet Muhammad was whom? Was his wives were behind him, inspiring him, encouraging him. That is the first madrasa. That's the beginning of his Muslim ummah. So if the female folk, our respected sisters, don't have the right education, most of the courses they're going to university, my experience, what is it? Fashion, design, technology, this, that, and a waste of time just to get out the house. How does that benefit anyone? We have enough fashion designers out there. We want Muslim women to be fashion designers and to design clothing for people. That's really going to help our society. You want to learn a skill that will benefit our people, benefit you, benefit your children, benefit the people around you. Those are the things that we need to be encouraging our people to do, to help our youth to come towards that focus. And likewise, to live a life of chastity. As we began with, that is normal. No young persons think, oh, that's abnormal. It's normal for a person to preserve, guard their chastity, guard their honor, guard themselves. That's a normal way of life. That's what we all should begin to impress upon all of our Muslim youth. Men and women, live a moral life, an upright life, because a loss of morality, any of entering to immorality, is a loss of a society. We are an ummah and a nation based upon our akhlaq, based upon our characteristics and our behavior. If your akhlaq go, then the ummah begins to go as well. And you can see the people around us, how you find that society is demoralizing on a daily basis again and again. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq and ability to go back, to implement the correct understanding of Quran and Sunnah, to live by that, to aspire to be amongst all those individuals. Any shortcomings or incorrect words that we said, that we ask forgiveness from you brothers and sisters, if I said anything may have upset any individual. And with that, we'll take any questions or corrections, inshallah.